Hello, everybody, and welcome to your Tuesday Lighting Critique. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend and were able to celebrate the holiday yesterday. So I want to jump right into it because we have a ton to go over, which happens over a long weekend. So we've got some videos, we've got images. I do want to answer some questions out of the gate, though. So two that stood out to me. One was from Dani. So he posted a question about a person in a pipeline works on a shot, shows it to their lead or the director, gets feedback. Next day, the person shows up and works on iterations. Dani wants to know, how do you improve more quickly? And the key is that you kind of don't. So that's just the way that you improve. You improve through lots and lots of iterations. I wish I could tell you, like, if you just learn this process or if you learn this thing, all of a sudden it'll create a aha moment. You'll be able to make a big leap forward. But for every single artist, it happens differently, right? So it'll just be like working on something and something will click, and then you go to your next project and something else will click, and then you might make a big jump, and then for 3 projects you don't learn anything. So it really is a matter of going through the process, getting the feedback, improving your own work. Eventually, you start to anticipate the notes. You start to see things yourself. You start to get a better understanding. And it just happens over time. I know it's frustrating, but this is a big part of what we do here. It's about consistency. It's about iterative improvements. And like I said, I sent this video out from an Ira Glass quote that I love, which is just talking about how your taste develops faster than your skill. So your ability to see that the work that you're creating isn't what you want it to be develops much, much, much faster than your ability to make things look that way. So it can be really frustrating, and that's when a lot of artists give up. But believe me, just trust this process. We're going to get you through it. We're going to get you over the hump to the next level. So it's a great question. Also, Clarissa wants to know about because she went back into lighting for a match to live action or like a photo simulation. You said, this is something that recruiters look for, and it's really great to have on your demo reel for sure. I think that stuff like this, I think this is important. It's a little more important for studios that do photo reel stuff and match to integration stuff. Less important for like a Pixar, DreamWorks, Blue Sky. But it is important that you're demonstrating the ability to understand visual elements and translate them into your own work. Now, for a studio like I said, like a Pixar or a DreamWorks or Disney, what they want to see is for you to take an image, like a reference image, and then maybe not necessarily do a one-to-one, but kind of what we do here, which is to translate that the core elements of those, like the shadow density or the overall mood, into your own work. So, but that being said, that doing projects like this, yes, it's great for your demo reel. It's also just great practice to develop, and it really helps develop your eye because you start to see these little things like this, these caustic patterns back there. You start to see that the way that the light is. The red is bouncing up in here. You start to see all these little things, and it really helps you develop as an artist. So, okay, so I tell you what, let's go through, we'll do the stills first today, because we always do videos first. We'll do stills today, and I will go through them alphabetically. So let's start with Adrian here. Okay, Adrian. So you've got 2 iterations. You got your A and your B. And you were wondering, let's start off by saying like which one we like better. I think that B is a little too saturated and a little too yellow. I think A might be a little desaturated and might be a touch pink. So I was wondering if we could, instead of being an either or, what if we both of them? And I'm just mixing them a little bit. So I think something along this realm would be good. So it's just like a little bit more saturation than what we're seeing in A. I hope I got those A's and B's right. But just like a touch more of that orangey sun glow into it would really be good. In terms of the rest of the image, I think that you could push a little more, and that being said, like that's kind of for the wall and for her skin tone. I'm wondering if we can't push a little bit more warmth into her hair. I think just like a little bit more of like warm hits in her hair would be really good. And I'm wondering if we can't creep the light just slightly more on her screen left side to read around. The other thing that will be good is I think her eye whites can go a little bit brighter, especially on this side, and really kind of read into that. And then the eye dings, since her eyes are a little bit shadowed, should be a little softer, and then put them right on that pupil to iris separation point. But like her outfit, her garments, her skin tone up here is looking really, really good. I also wonder if we can't push just a slight bit more specularity into her fill side here. But I think this is looking really great. I think the biggest things are getting that color right, and then trying to push a little more warmth into her hair, and getting a little more speck, and then cleaning up the eyes a little bit. I think we'll be good because this one looks really, really good. All right, next up we have Amit. So based on your reference, you're making good progress here. I think that just a touch. Okay, so a few things. I think a little more light can creep over his face and kind of create that triangle here. Now, if the geometry doesn't support it, that's fine. But I think we can spill a little bit more light over here. It would be cool if you see how the ear is getting darker in there. If you maybe you can make some ambient occlusion just to create some more darkness in here. And the other area I'd like for you to work on is, do you see how there's just like a slight warm kick rim kind of coming in back behind his ear? It would be nice to get a little touch of warmth in there as well. I like that you're pushing the brights, but I think that these can come down just like 8%, 10%. And I think that those are really good things to work on for the next iteration. Clarissa, looking great. So answering your question about the reflection stuff, and getting that to match. The only way to really do it is kind of what you're doing. It's to kind of, unless you have an HDRI from that original scene, I think that what I would do is I would just put a plane with an image, off camera, a plane with an image of like windows with some autumn leaves out there, and just kind of position that plane in a way that would kind of mimic that look. And so you can kind of like base that. So it looks like you have something here. And the reason why I would do it on a plane as opposed to like an HDRI map is just because you have more control over it. The other things that I was noticing was I think you can get a little bit more bounce redness down in here. And I think that will help out a lot, just to get like a little bit more of the red spill on into the shadow there. I was looking at the interior of this reflection, and I'm wondering, it might be a position thing, but I'm wondering why they look pretty different. I guess we're in here. So I guess, because I'm wondering why I'm seeing this tomato. And it might be a slight bit of the shape. It might be the direction. It might be an incident of the IOR on this might be affecting that a little bit. I'm not going to worry too much about that, but I would just like to see. Do you see how this gets like a little bit, like we just see a little bit here, and then this kind of gets darker as we go back there? It would be cool. Yeah, it would just be cool to see. Basically, it would be cool to see less of this reflection in there if there's any way to get that. It might be a matter of just slightly tweaking the angle, but don't worry too much about that one. Like I mentioned, getting these kind of caustic lights back here would be really cool. And then looking at the shadow in here, notice how it goes a little bit brighter as we get more to the front, and it's because there's more light rattling underneath that from the key. So it'd be nice if we can get some more bounces in there to kind of soften that shadow. But again, really beautiful stuff. This passes the eyeball test. When you first look at it, it's hard to tell it's hard to tell that it's not real initially. It's just when you like really stare at it for a while and start breaking it down. All right, Dani, we've got a few images here for you today. A couple images in the video. Depth of field's looking good. It's just too strong. I would take this down by like maybe 50%, just because it's starting to feel a little bit miniature. Your question about inverting it, yeah, I think, it's just a matter of inverting it for the foreground, and I think you've got it right. It looks okay. I would just really work on darkening the back of this, because it seems odd that the light is coming from this way, but the back is very illuminated. This should almost be like silhouetted to the point of where it's like a nice framing element for this whole thing. Because these wood panels wouldn't have the same type of subsurface scattering and translucency as the plastic materials here. So a little bit less depth of field, darkening on the back of that. I'm wondering if there's a way to get more complexity in the ground, because it's such a broad. Because there's a couple things that are kind of holding this back, and there it's just like a level of detail, both in the brick wall, like variation, because it's very similar throughout the whole thing, and same thing with the ground. And this might just come in the next iteration, so I wouldn't worry about this too much, because at some point we should do pencils down on this and just move on to the next project. But if there's a way of defining the surface, because like this ground is, I'm not sure if this is turf, if it's like rubber, just to kind of like define the space, like define the surface just a little bit more. So I would challenge you to look at some reference of the ground that you're trying to replicate, and then see if there's any more visual elements within that. And then for the wall, let's try creating some ambient occlusion on this wall or something to get some more interior shadows on it, because I can see that it's a little darker from the back, but I would like for there to be a little bit of shadowing going on in there, like small shadows with the bricks and the mortar and that kind of thing. For your other project here, I think you're making a lot of progress. I think overall, so 3 things. Overall, you can push these brights brighter in here. Push that central area brighter, and then take down this bounce light and take down the outside. The outside, it's just because it's kind of interfering with our read on this, and this bounce just because the amount of light that's hitting the ground now doesn't really justify that level of brightness on the bounce. But really starting to come together, really starting to form a story here, and that's great to see. Diana, this one looks great. I think it's a lovely pass. I do think that we could maybe get a slight bit more subsurface on there, but honest to God, this one's looking really great. For your other, I love that you did these other versions of it. For this one of the things about this feeling is that they are surrounded with these carnival lights. And in this one, I don't feel the sense of surrounding. I feel like the light's only coming in from this way. So I would challenge you to put a little bit more on this side of them to really kind of create the feeling. Because like one of the big things about this shot is you feel like they're inside of a carnival, right? There's lights all around them. There's activity all around them. There's fun all around them. And it doesn't have to be like, obviously he's brighter on this side than he is on this side, but you still feel a little bit of that light bouncing in from that side. So I would challenge you to push that, and then really kind of also play up some of the glowiness back behind the characters, because there's a lot of diffusion going on in that shot, and I think that you could kind of push in the same that same feeling into yours. Back behind them, and like this would just be a matter of peeling this back a little bit on them. And this is probably a little strong, but just to kind of give that. Ooh, man, my Wacom goes crazy when I try and do sliders. There you go. Just something to add like a little bit more glowiness, haziness, happiness back there. And then for your third iteration, so funny. I watched this movie probably 3 times this weekend with my son. He got real into robots, and so I showed him Big Hero 6, and he'd already seen Iron Giant. Anyway, so one thing about this shot is they are kind of in a unique position where they're level with the sunset, and I think, and it really kind of reads because like you don't see much of the light here. It's pretty dark. It's pretty flat on them. Like you don't see a lot of light on the top of them, and it really feels like they're looking directly into the sun. With this one, I want to feel that directly looking into the sun thing. You've kind of got it on the characters here, but I want it to be brighter on the front of this and a little darker on the top. And same thing with some of these other elements. Like I wanna feel like they're kind of looking directly into it. I can tell by the reflections in their eyes that you've kind of got it set up that way. It feels a little kick to the side because like I'm looking at the shaping here, and I wanna feel it a little stronger. I want to feel it a little bit stronger. So, and the other thing too is when you're doing this, you want to create a slightly different key position on them, so it doesn't just like look like you're just changing the color. So I would challenge you to do that next iteration. All right, Hisham. So you asked about whether the sky needed more variation. I don't believe it does. I believe you've got a lot of detail in the foreground, and I think that's totally fine where it is. I think the characters look great. I'm wondering if we can't add a little bit more warmth to her, especially in her shadows. Just because they're kind of like right here, like the shadow on her arm is just like kind of dark. And just because she's kind of our hero, and probably on him too, like getting some more, try pushing just a little bit more warmth into their fills. That might, let's see. So just looking at him, just something along, like, maybe not as much yellow, maybe a little more red. Just like a little bit more warmth in there, I think would help out a lot. And then additionally, you know, it would be kind of cool, like I was mentioning last time, and you can, you know, I think it would be cool to get some actual like God rays in here from the sun, just kind of shining down, just like really subtly. And also, like, I know I mentioned this before, but this area under here is super dark. The light bouncing up under here is super dark. I think with this time of day, I do feel like there'd be a little more bounce light in there. Last time I'll mention it. If you don't do it in the next iteration, it's totally fine. But I just like, I'm looking at that and it looks crisp. What I like to call crunchy or crispy, in that I could see the brights, and that's it. Like everything else is like it feels like there's a photograph that the contrast has been turned up a little bit too much. And it would, yeah, maybe two. No, I was about to give a note, but I'm backing away from it. Okay. But this is like, overall, this is looking really good. All right, Kat. So we've got some new lighting, new all kinds of newness on here. You posted your Pinterest board. I went ahead and pulled in some of the images from that. And the big thing like that I am noticing and that I've been thinking about with this, so I think that there needs to be a little bit more shader work done. And I'd like to see that in the next iteration. 1 on the character and 2 on the leaves. We do, looking at some of these references, there is, you know, obviously some darker elements closer to the camera. But one of the things is the leaves never get super dark, right? Leaves are translucent. Light passes through them. And they never, like, even this in here still has some value in it. So when I'm seeing stuff like this or this, like, I think that you need some translucency or subsurface scattering on those to really allow that light to penetrate through the leaves, so they start to feel like leaves as opposed to like a harder piece of geometry. Same thing goes with the character a little bit. So the way that, you know, we've got the line here, and then her shadows getting kind of dark. It makes it feel like she's made out of not skin material, like she's not flesh and blood. And when I was looking at something, like, look at how there's a softness, and this is a little bit of a different lighting scenario, but there's a softness to the transition between the key to the fill, and that's because there's some light that penetrates the skin and allows it to scatter, where this is like the skin is either in key or it's in fill. So I would challenge you to try and do a pass at the shaders. Additionally, I did it a couple times last week. At some point this week, it would be great if you could like take just one shot and render out. We did this for a different shot of yours too. Is render out each light individually. So render out the key light and skylight or whatever other lights you're doing. just save them as the light name or the, like I said, key light, sun, fill, bounce, rim, whatever you're using it for. And then I can kind of assemble those because I want to play around with this a little bit more to really help get the read going. But for you, that plus the shader work is I think a good next step. Kevin, this was your update. I just want to say this one looks really good. Nicely done job hitting the notes on this. I think you're ready to move on to the next iteration. Shibli. So this is really based on your last iteration. I think you've overcorrected, which is totally fine. I think we can go definitely split the difference more towards your original on the level of subsurface scattering on this on the snail. So a little bit less than this, but it's just a touch more than the last version. Additionally, I'm surprised that I'm not seeing more of this light kind of bouncing around in here and creating a little bit more warmth. It's totally fine. Also, same thing here. Double check your subsurface scattering on your shader because it would be nice to get a little bit of more warmth into these shadows down here. Good job on the desaturation in here. I do think that this will eventually, we should blur this and put this in a little bit of depth of field, just as immediate foreground. And then also watch out for, we've gone a little bit too blue with it. So you want to kind of shift back in some yellow values in there in the grass. In terms of the kid, the bounce light's looking really good. I think we can brighten the eyes. Okay. I think we can brighten the eyes up a little bit more. And yeah, and I think that should be the next, I think that'll be good for the next iteration. So subsurface here. Wonder why there's no bounce there. A little less blue here. Try and put it out of focus. Check the subsurface on the skin. Maybe up it a little bit so we can get some more warmth in the shadow part of his hand. More specifically on his hand than anywhere else. All right, in this other version, we've got your reference here. Lots of light coming down from the top. A little bit of bounce light coming in here. I think we can kind of, yeah, and yours, they're both kind of even, if not that light's a little stronger. So I think we can go stronger on top, a little darker in here. And this light feels very frontal. It might just be his face shape. But do you feel how this light, again, it's illuminating under his nose, but not so much the bridge of his nose and then his forehead, which really implies that it's kind of like bounce light coming up. So I'm wondering if we can't angle it a little bit more underneath. And then these cards, I would make these darker, make them not get hit by key light, just for a framing element. So there's a darker thing that allows us to focus back here. And then check other shots from this sequence to see if you can see the tabletop, because the shadows feel very hard edged, and I'm wondering if that's accurate, and B, the amount of yellow light that's now hitting the table is kind of throwing off the color of everything. And so I'd like to see, kind of a little bit more reference on that before I continue giving notes, if you have it. And then the one thing to watch out for and stuff like this, and again, I know this isn't necessarily your creation, but if you have a JPEG back there that has clamped values, well, if you have a JPEG that you've darkened in the comp, these lights will kind of get clamped and weird looking. So if you compare this to this, do you see how there's specular highlights here, a little bit here? When we go back into yours, all that's just been kind of washed away, and it's kind of all midtones. So just something to be aware of. I would consider finding another background image if you can't make the adjustments there. Just something that might be, because it's just weird that it's out of focus and clamped values and stuff. It just feels like there's an image, a JPEG back there. So you could even just make it dark back there and just have a slight bit of value. But this level is not giving us the best read. All right, next up. So this one I think you're spot on with this. I think it's really beautiful colors, really beautiful fall off. You're getting a good understanding of this. It doesn't match exactly the reference. I think that your key light in the middle is a little bit brighter, but for the purposes of this, I think it works out really well. So I would encourage you to move on to the next iteration, the next challenge, the next class, and keep moving forward. So really, really great job there. All right, and then we've got Tristan. So Tristan, I was able to get your more recent iteration. So I wanted to go through each one of your references and talk about this. So, and then we'll kind of circle back. Okay. So with this one, you were talking about the colors and global lighting on the character. Totally true. The lights are very small and they're very saturated, and I'm not getting that level of saturation on your character. I think you can push it more in that color scheme. This feels very John Wicky. I don't know if this is. I think this is John Wick. But yeah, just super saturated, super interesting colors there. So make sure you're getting that. These images I like because Rocky is a friend of mine. We went to photo school together. We went to high school together. He played baseball with my brother. He's a great guy, and every time I see his images, they make me smile. So you're talking about like getting the underlight and the bounce from the table, creating a level of discomfort, and the eye dings, right? And so I'm not feeling that level of bounce. I'm not feeling that discomfort level because it feels like there's more light coming down from the top than coming up underneath him. It's so for the light underneath him, it's just that like little bit kind of in here. And to really feel the underlighting, it has to be about the eyes. Because it's the eyes that are thrown off that look a little bit strange, that make us feel a little unique. The fact that this is lit and then like this part of the eye but not the top is what's going to help that read. To the aquarium structure, the volume of the water. Yeah, notice how super dense it gets, super quick. We'll touch upon that in a second. And then, is there one more after this? Oh yeah. So for this one, there's, you got your key light, and it's hitting here, the shadow value, cool, and the rim light. That's a great breakdown. But looking, and you've got it on yours here too. So you've got the key light coming down here. So, this is kind of but the difference is your key light isn't wrapping around to the middle of the face, which is what we're seeing here in the reference, and it has a lot more specularity in it. So to get this one, it'd be more like key light here, fill light in here, and then rim light along here. So what the issue is that we've got some conflicting interests, right? So if you want to do that, then we can't quite do the underlighting uneasy thing. So I would challenge you to pick one or the other. Is the main light source coming from up above, or is it coming under from the table? Because we can work with either, and it's totally fine. I would just say that they're a little bit of a conflict. Talking about the atmospherics, it's kind of similar throughout all of it right now, and I would like to see. Actually, we can use your two versions as an example. So I think that what we can do is create less on him and more on the background, and that will allow him to pop forward a little bit, and we can even murky this up a little. Let's see, that's not gonna work. But I think that like the like getting back into here, like that should be even denser than it is right now. Like really kind of build it up as it moves back into space, and then anything past this exit sign should just be kind of like that, right? Like super atmospheric. So for you, I would say next iterations, figure out the key position. Do you want the main light to be underneath, or do you want it to be above? I do think that the light either way can hit the central part of the face a little bit more, either again from the table or from the ceiling. And let's increase the variation in the atmospheric fall off, so it's a little denser in the back, a little darker up front, and we'll go from there. So good progress there. And William, all right. So we've got your previous version here, updated. So I think the great job getting this light in here. I do think the angle is a little shallow. I would pitch it up just a little bit more, just so it's a little bit more like a 45-degree angle, just because like that feels a little super low to the ground. For the character, I think I like the level of illumination on the previous one. I know that you flip-flop the sides. I'm just wondering. I'm looking at the nose, and I'm wondering if we can't trickle a little bit more light onto his nose by pulling that around. Body's looking really good. I think that works a lot better. I would put a touch of a cool sky in there, just like a little indication of a sky. And then the last thing, and this one might be tricky, is that I love the reflections in the street. I love the detail in his skin. I love the detail in the brick. I see the detail in the background. These things are lacking detail, mostly in their shape. Like if you just kind of look at them, they just look like primitives, and it's because we have these hard edges on them. So I'm wondering if there's a way for you to add maybe a displacement. Maybe like there's two things you can do. One, you can rough up the surface of it to make it look a little more gringy like the rest of it, more detailed like the rest of it. Or we can pull off the specular highlights and really kind of tone it down so that these are more like darker elements that are in there, and that we don't actually read like this kind of hard line edge. So that would be my advice there. Okay, so that's it for the stills. Let's hop over into our videos. So we'll start with Aaron's first. So we've got this is the newer version. This is the previous version. And all right. So still looking at the black line around the legs. It's not a matte. Okay, it might just be the lighting. Let's take a look at the yeah, that explosion of light looks a lot better. I'm wondering if it can be a little bit warmer. It feels a little cool, and so if we're white balanced for the interior space, and you can see the light coming in here is a little bit warmer, I would try and try pushing a little bit more warmth on there. The other thing is well, two things. One, her scarf is super saturated in this, and two is this is a little bit saturated down there. Oh, and three, the light rays coming in here. Oh, what did I just do? Just went back. The light rays coming in here are feeling a little bit greenish. I would push them a little bit warmer. TV animations feels pretty good. And then the last thing that I would do is like this on his neck. I guess it's the rim overall on him. I would take that down a little bit in value. And try brightening his eyes a little bit more too overall. Again, a little unrealistic, but it would be nice to get him to get that to read a little bit stronger. But this is looking much, much better. All right, from the outside version, we've got newer version versus older, right? Okay. One of the things about this one that creeps in, I'm wondering if we can't play this tree as if it's in shadow a little bit, because I think that'll help it with the framing element. Key light on this looks better. It feels cool though. Like it feels almost like a cool rim. I want to pull it around just a little bit more, just because like this one here at the beginning is looking so good. It's a little bright there, but like this one's looking nice. Like I want it to kind of just feel similar to that one. And all right. And then last thing, there's a little bit more red in this reflection than in the sky. Like if you look at the blue values, a little bit more purple, a little less cyan. Same thing with the clouds. I would just get those to match up a little bit more. And I'm wondering if it's that, because it almost feels like a mirror. I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a little bit darker, because we'd be able to see a little bit more transparency. But find some reference on that. But I think that will be good. And then lastly, just a little bit of super brightness on her arm as she's flopping around. I would just tone that down just a touch. But really good job there. Ashley. All right. So that's a nice explosion of light coming in there. Same thing, I think the light can be a little warmer that spills in. It feels a little cool, like I'm looking up here. And I just see that like cyan, it really reads as something very cool. I'm wondering if we can't get a little more contrast on the outside. And yeah. And then watch out, his hand gets super subsurface scattery in there. I would just take down his scale a little bit more. Yeah, you know what it might be with the outside? So the ground is pretty lifted, and I'm wondering if like the core color of the ground couldn't go a little bit darker to really kind of ground it into place there. And then yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on this outside. Yeah, it just feels a little dusty. Like it feels like there's a thin layer of dust on it. And I think it's just a matter of increasing some of the getting some more dark points here on the ground, because like this shadow's dark, especially for an outside scene. It's interesting because I wonder what's causing that to be dark, but then like we're not seeing the same level of shadow under there. Let's try darkening the ground up a little bit. I think that might help. Let's give that a go and see where that takes us for the next iteration. All right, last on the agenda, we've got Dani. Yeah. All right, so depth of field, again, a little strong. But on this one, because it's like Candyland, I feel like it might be okay. My only question is, I see depth of field on this part, like this part of the house is in foreground, is sharp. This part is out of focus. But then like this stuff back here is all sharp. So I'm feeling like it should all be like everything. If you're going to go that shallow of a depth of field blur, I think you can push everything back behind it a little out of focus. And then same thing with like your other shot. The foreground gets a little out of field. Good job getting this initial tree here at the beginning into more shadow. That looks a lot better. This feels a little like the pink spill on that is a little strong. I would expect with the key light coming in from that way that this side would get a little bit darker, similar to like what's happening with this one. So you may want to look into that. And then I still think you can go brighter on some of these white elements, because again, if they're in direct sunlight, same thing with the fence. And then one thing about this one is if you can rotate the UVs, rotate the shader on it, just because I see that line passing over, and I think you can hide that on the other side of it. And then yeah, let's start there, and then eventually we'll add, like I said, some atmospheric fall off on that as well. All right, so that is everything for today, guys. Please let me know if you have any questions. Like I said, there's a lot to go through, lots of questions. If I missed anything, please let me know, and I will see you all tomorrow. All right, happy lighting, everybody.